Welcome, I am Danny Level 100, and today on Danny Designs, I will be talking about the Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer. This video is not intended as a personal attack on anyone at BioWare or Electronic Arts. These are just my thoughts and opinions. And before we hop into this video, I want to mention a few things I left out of my campaign critique. One thing that I really did not like from the campaign was the Sudoku puzzles at the Remnant sites. I also didn't like the platforming elements inside the Remnant tombs. At first, I wasn't a big fan of the Mass Effect Andromeda soundtrack, but it grew on me. And with that being said, let's hop into the multiplayer discussion. Mass Effect Andromeda's multiplayer pits a team of 4 players against one of 3 enemy factions: the Ket, the Remnant, and the Outlaws. Players can choose a difficulty level between Bronze, Silver, and Gold. Mass Effect 3 had the players going up against 10 waves of enemies, but now it's only 7, which leads to a much faster pace in terms of combat and games completed. Your standard wave is a survival wave, where players must eliminate the opposing faction without being eliminated themselves. Other waves are objective-based and have players completing tasks such as retrieving artifacts, uploading data, and eliminating enemy VIPs. All of this is familiar to anyone who has played the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. In terms of gameplay, Mass Effect Andromeda's horde-based waves no longer focuses on players hunkering down and taking a defensive position, turtling up and allowing enemies to come to them. The design of the multiplayer maps and inclusion of the jetpack encourages players to use verticality and agility to outflank and outmaneuver their enemies. Just like the campaign, no matter what class or character you play, you all have access to the jetpack. If you're not using the jetpack, you will quickly be overwhelmed and swarmed by any enemy faction you play against. If you're the fan of the combat and action of the single player, then the multiplayer is right up your alley. The combat and engagement really shines in this game. Using your abilities, weapons, and combo detonations to maximum effect is key to succeeding, especially on harder difficulties. A quick note, I played this on the PC, and the PC community is there's lots of people playing, but in my experience, almost nobody talks on the mic or uses the chat system. As you might guess, this makes communicating with your team very difficult and sometimes frustrating. The game launched with 5 different stages. Firebase Derelict takes place inside of a Ket ship, Firebase Icebreaker, which takes place on Vold, Firebase Magma, Firebase Sandstorm, and Firebase Zero, which takes place on an asteroid. To unlock characters, players must buy loot crates with the credits they earn from missions. Characters are broken up into different rarities, from common to ultra rare. Once a player has a character unlocked, they can level up the character and their abilities. And if they unlock the same character again through a loot crate, they will receive customization options for that character and additional skill points. Each of these characters also have a backstory. The flavor text on these cards tell the character's backstory, which kind of annoys me, because it seems a lot of these characters are criminals. To avoid court-martial on Palavin for his role in a massacre, the Turian soldier went on the lam and worked as a mercenary until he was able to buy his way into the initiative. After getting drunk and missing his rite of passage on Tachanka, the shame and disappointment drove the Krogan Vanguard to join up with the initiative. He has a few anger management issues and like to hit things hard. Most players that I encountered on the forums or the Reddit, they like to make their own backstories for their character. I know this isn't a huge game-breaking issue, but for some fans of the game, this must be kind of annoying. A new system to the multiplayer is something called Prestige. XP you earn doesn't go just to leveling up your character, but goes towards unlocking and leveling up a bonus stat. For example, if you reach level 20, which is the max level of all the characters, and you continue to play that character, you're still unlocking XP that goes towards your bonus stat. And bonus stats are things like extra health, extra shields. I feel like this is a good way of keeping players invested. If you're going to put a lot of time into this, you definitely are going to get rewarded by getting these bonus stats unlocked. One important element of the Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer that a lot of people will overlook is the strike teams. A strike team is a computer-controlled squad that players can send out on Apex missions. Each of these missions have certain parameters, and it will let you know how long it will take your squad to complete and what the chance of success is. Upon completing these Apex missions, your squad will bring you back rewards such as mission funds. You can also choose to attempt these missions on your own or with a squad, but I recommend using your strike team as often as possible as they can earn you rewards while you're not playing the game. And it can even earn you rewards and upgrades that can be used in single player. There's really no downside. If your strike team fails a mission, you don't lose the strike team. In fact, they gain experience, only becoming stronger and stronger, which makes their chance of success even higher and higher, which means it's easier for you to get more and more items for single player or mission funds for multiplayer. Loot crates are back. Can't seem to escape them. Every multiplayer game I've played this year has loot crates, which is actually kind of fine to me. Unlike a lot of my complaints I had with Gears of War, the ratio to unlock crates is just about right. A premium box, which is the box you want to be unlocking if you want to get characters or weapons, is 100,000 credits. Each game of bronze completed, you can average about 10 to 15,000 credits. If you complete a game on the silver difficulty, you average around 25,000 credits. A game on the gold difficulty can average around 50,000 credits or more, depending on your personal performance and medals you earn. On average, if you're a new player and you're playing on the bronze difficulty, you will have to play about 10 games to earn one premium box. If you're playing on the silver difficulty, on average, that's about 4 games. Each game is about 15 minutes, which means on average, you could complete about 4 games in an hour, and that is 1 premium box per hour, which is a pretty good unlock ratio if you ask me. I think it balances out pretty well. You're not really being pressured to spend real money to buy these crates, as they're very easy to obtain by just playing the game. But of course, there are some downsides with this game. There's a persistent glitch that cuts out all the audio. The game just mutes itself. The first time this happened to me, I thought my speakers blew out. There was a low pop sound followed by complete silence. And when you leave the game, in my experience, the single player is silent, the main menu is silent, everything is silent. You're gonna have to turn off the game and turn it back on. I did some research and found out that this glitch has been in the game since launch. And there's been 2 patches since, and they still have not addressed this problem. And this glitch, unfortunately, really takes me out of my experience. I'll play maybe 2 or 3 games and be having a good time, and then suddenly it just mutes. Also, another minor glitch, the announcer Kandros can become muted as well, which can cause a little bit of confusion here or there, especially if you join a game in progress. You might join and suddenly you're on wave 6 and you have an objective, but you don't know that because if you join mid-game, you might not have the announcer telling you the objective. I think almost every play session I've had, there's been 1 or 2 minor glitches. Some of these glitches can be things like animation glitches, or falling beneath the level and getting stuck inside of its geometry. Taking cover can be kind of an issue, as sometimes the game does not recognize when you want to take cover. Another criticism I have is that Mass Effect 3 was very similar to Gears of War, as it was a sticky cover based game, which meant you press a button to slide into cover and become stuck to the wall. Mass Effect Andromeda completely drops this system. It's more naturalistic, akin to something like The Last of Us. You walk up to cover and then you start to crouch. The problem with this is the game fails to recognize when you want to take cover. Oftentimes there's about a second lag between standing near cover and taking cover, which will leave you exposed to enemy gunfire. And this is often very frustrating because if you ever want to shoot back at the enemy, you usually have to stand up and return fire, which will of course expose you to more gunfire. You think the shield would mitigate this, but for some reason in this game, most characters you play as have relatively low shields when compared to characters from the previous game. Switching to a naturalistic cover system also meant that there's no longer over-the-cover grabs. Over-the-cover grabs are something introduced in Mass Effect 3 and were very popular. It would allow players to perform an execution maneuver on enemies that would wander up to them while they were in cover. Oftentimes this execution did lots of damage and would one-shot weak enemies. The melee system has been completely reworked in this game and is very underwhelming. In Mass Effect 3, when the player hit the melee button, they would hit their opponent with the butt of their gun. If the player did this 3 times, they would follow up the melee with a character unique melee, a heavy melee. These heavy melees were actually quite powerful. In Mass Effect Andromeda, there is no light melee, there is just the heavy melee. The difference here is it lacks the power and force that it did in Mass Effect 3. This is oftentimes very underwhelming and disappointing, and it feels just completely useless. Even characters such as the Krogan, which historically had very powerful melee attacks, capable of knocking down multiple opponents or one-shotting weaker enemies, does almost nothing. I find it completely baffling how I can vanguard charge a target, shoot them with a sniper rifle, and then have to melee them 3 times in order to kill one basic enemy. This shouldn't be the case when you're playing a Krogan. How would I rate this game? Well, for one, I think the multiplayer captures one of the best parts of Andromeda. However, I feel that the game, just like its single-player component, is ultimately flawed by many glitches that keep me from truly enjoying the experience. I will say this, I do hope that Mass Effect Andromeda continues to get a lot of support from its fans and from BioWare so that it can only be improved upon in the future, with more content added and more patches. With that being said, my overall impressions are positive but mixed. If you're a fan of Mass Effect 3's multiplayer, I do recommend it. If you're not a fan, then I can't really recommend it because there are better experiences out there, better multiplayer experiences, and better co-op experiences out there, frankly. And with that being said, I would like to end this critique by saying thank you to everyone for watching, and I would like to give a special shout out to everybody on VidMe. Thank you all very much for the support, and if you have any questions, comments, or critiques, feel free to leave a comment. And if you ever want to talk to me, you can find me on Twitch. I Twitch stream as often as possible. I'm currently working on my own game, so if you ever want to ask me questions or talk about game design or game development, you can find me at twitch.tv/DannyLV100. And that's pretty much it. Thank you guys once again, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.